Welcome to the Be Empowered podcast with your host, Graham Hopkins. My goal is to help you regain your power by bridging the gap between who you think you are right now and who you really are. In simple language, that is like making your childhood dreams come true. This is for those who want to make an impact in their lives but don't know how to get there. Be ensured, when you know and feel connected to your spiritual mind, you master your world.
So welcome everybody. My name's Graham Hopkins. I'm your host of the Be Empowered show. It's my pleasure to welcome today a very special guest. Her name is Susie Beiler, and I've known Susie for a number of years in a virtual way, and I've watched her progress and her growth, and it's a real pleasure to actually meet her more in a one-to-one form and connect with Susie. So Susie, I'd really like to welcome you to this show.
Thank you, Graham. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So, Susie, you've been on a real journey. I've noticed this over the years. I seem to have memories of you in connection with nutrition, and I'm just curious as to what led you on this path that you've been on over the last number of years, and can you share a little bit about where it started?
Absolutely. Well, it really started when I was an infant and I was really sick, and the doctors pumped me full of antibiotics as, like, you know, a 3-month-old. But fast forward to when I was about 23, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome. And the doctor that I was seeing, he was a chiropractor and an alternative doctor who specialized in CFS. He started introducing me to some concepts in nutrition. And he put me on a certain diet, and I had to, like, take all this food out of my diet. And I noticed that I had a little bit more energy. I noticed that it made a difference. So it started to intrigue me. And then I was like, you know, I want to go to school for this because this is kind of powerful. So I went to school for nutrition, and meanwhile, all this time I was functioning minimally in my life. I was getting by. I held down a full-time job. There was one point where I had to go out on disability. I was out for 3 months because I was really sick and my back went out and I was in a lot of pain. But I was making it, you know. I was just kind of getting by. But I didn't have a quality of life. I was tired all the time. You know, I would go to work, come home, that was it. I really wasn't doing much else with my life. When I went to nutrition school, I also started receiving acupuncture. And this was one of those things that I believe is very divinely guided because I was desperate. I had tried all of these things, and, you know, some of them worked to a certain degree, but I wasn't really getting well. And I was very young, and I thought ahead to my, you know, to when I would be 80, and I was like, I don't want to live being sick. Like, that's not okay. There was something in my spirit that was just kind of like kept nudging me on, kept pulling me forward. And I just kept, you know, trying different things. So I started doing acupuncture, and I met a wonderful man who later turned out to be my mentor for 9 years. And it was session number 6, I believe, December 13th, 2004. I'm lying on the acupuncture table, and I have this realization that I don't have chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, keep in mind, the diagnosis of CFS is something that doctors say, at least when I had it 10 years ago, they say You don't get better from this. This is something you have to learn how to live with. You do your best. This is not something that you heal from. So for me to be lying on that table, I really believe my spirit was blown open. My soul was just like, Susie, there is something else for you in this life other than this diagnosis. And it was like all my meridians opened up, and that was it. I just knew. Now, I say that I healed myself because since that time, I have gone deeper and deeper into my own healing and finding my wholeness and discovering who I really am spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, all of those things.
Susie, can you enlighten me on something? I did an amazing interview the other day with a guy called Adam Shaw. You'll hear him on this show real soon. And Adam's an amazing guy. He was brought up in the grounds of a psychiatric hospital. Like his parents were, they were both nurses, and they ran this hospital. He literally had thousands of observations with all types of diseases, including death, of course. And he came to the conclusion after many years that every, what he calls progressive degenerative disease, comes from a lack of self-love. So my first question to you is, what does that really mean, and is chronic fatigue syndrome in that category? That'd be my first question.
100%. 100%. 10 years ago, I did not love myself. I felt my body had betrayed me. I was under the Christian oppressive kind of judgmental paradigm, which is exhausting. That's what my CFS was really about. I was exhausted from being so oppressed and not being able to fully express who I am. But how could I have expressed who I was? I didn't know who I was. I didn't love who I was, truly. So I'm with Adam 100%.
Excellent. Because that's been my view for a long time, and it was just like a breath of fresh air to do this interview with a guy that had so much practical experience in this field.
I love
and
it.
That was his conclusion. It was amazing. And now you're reinforcing that view.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about your journey where you've come to really know and love Susie Beiler.
Wow. Well, you know, I really had to allow myself to see all parts and facets of myself. The good, the bad, the ugly. I really had to get vulnerable with myself. I had to start feeling what I was really feeling instead of pushing it aside and judging my feelings. It's a big question, Graham. Let me take a deep breath.
Oh, I've got lots of time, Susie.
That's a really big question. I had to become real. I was living a life, you know, that my parents taught me to live, instead of living my life. And no disrespect to my parents, I love and adore and cherish my parents. Let that be known to the universe. But my soul had a different path than the family I was born into. And so I had to really understand who I was. When I had those moments of oneness with everything, when I had the moments of knowing the shining star that I am, when I had those, like that soul knowing of where I came from, not an intellectual knowing, but like a soul knowing, Like, I don't come from this planet. I've come from somewhere else. And I began to appreciate myself in that light. And I began to appreciate, my differences, my sensitivities. I have a sensitive digestive system. I have a sensitive system, when I go out into the world, it can be overwhelming. The electromagnetic frequencies, the hustle and bustle. I'm an introvert. I need my quiet time and my space. When I began to really appreciate myself for that and not judge it as wrong, not judge my differences and my quirks as something that's wrong, but it's actually quite beautiful, and it makes me who I am. Like, coming into that deep acceptance just allows that love for myself to flow, and to do things for myself that nurture who I truly am. Spending lots of time in nature, breathing deeply, allowing myself to be feminine instead of trying to be masculine. All these things have really taken me deeper into self-love. And it's a journey, Graham. It's not something that, like, I did have a sudden wake-up moment where I knew who I was in an instant, but then that 9-year journey, almost 10-year journey since then, is really going into deeper levels of that, deeper levels of intellectual understanding of that, emotional understanding of that, spiritual understanding of that. And all this information has come to me through my heart. As I began to soften and open my heart, I've accessed those deeper parts of myself. I've accessed that knowing of who I am. And as my heart softens, I'm able to fall in love with myself even more.
I think we've been on a similar journey, Susie, because 2004 I read a book that really changed my life, and it was all about learning to accept and love myself before you've got anything to give to anybody else. So, as you say, it's a journey of actually allowing that to work out, but there has to be a starting point of acceptance that that's who you are and where you are, and then it's a matter of moving on from there to allow that to work out in your life. So it's an exciting journey.
It is. And I want to say something about that word allow that you said several times. It is really key in this process of empowerment. It may seem like empowerment is something that you have to kind of like gird up your loins and be or do, but empowerment is really about allowing. And in my language, it's about allowing the universe to love me. It's about allowing my judgments of myself and others to fall away. It's about allowing myself to just be and to express who I am the way I want to express it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see, but I have sparklies on my eyelids. I'm like getting into wearing sparkles because it brings me joy. It's fun. I love it.
Well, Susie, I've noticed you've used the word quality of life, and you've talked a lot about judgment. And one of the things that I've become aware of is that if we want quality of life, we have to stop judging ourselves and judging others. And there's a great link between self-judgment and attaining that quality of life that we're all after, but remains elusive to so many. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, judgment has been a huge theme in my life. I've always felt very judged by the church and by Christianity, and therefore I started judging myself, and it really took away from my essence. It really took away from me being free to express who I am, to be who I am. Judgment's a tricky thing because it can get intertwined with discernment, which is a completely different issue. And I'm big on discernment. I'm big on using my intuition. But discernment doesn't judge. Judge is like, you get this feeling of like, I did something wrong. And just, when I get that, I don't like that. I'm still working through that one. It's so what's the word, in our society, it's so drenched. We're so, judgment is so rampant in our society. There's right and there's wrong. Well, is there? Is there? For me now, I look at it as what raises my vibration, what takes it down. If it raises my vibration, it's for me. If it lowers my vibration, it's not for me. That's it. And then you don't have to bring that judgy feeling into it.
So right and wrong, black and white, all these things, good and evil, they're all a matter of our perspective that we paint in our mind. So, Susie, at what stage did you train as an occupational therapist?
That was right after high school. I went straight into college, and I got my bachelor's as an occupational therapist. And that training really taught me to see people in all their different facets, to see the whole person. So just as a contrast, like physical therapists are taught a lot about the body mechanics, how it works. An occupational therapist is taught that, and they're also taught to look at the emotional aspect of the person, to look at the mental aspect, to look at the spiritual aspect, to look at their health, and to create a whole picture. And so I didn't know it at the time, but it was really laying this foundation using Western medicine to give me that foundation for what I would later do.
So can you tell us a little bit about where you've taken that?
Yeah, so now I do like a combination of things. I'm a sound healing practitioner, and I also do nutrition. But if someone comes to me for sound healing, it's not like I'm giving them a performance and their frequency changes and it's all good. I'm incorporating everything I've learned from nutrition, everything I've learned from occupational therapy. I'm looking at them as a whole person, and I'm saying, okay, where do you most need guidance? And I give them coaching, and I facilitate healing with sound. But it's a really cool, holistic, well-rounded thing that we get to do together, because I'm not just, saying, okay, here's a body in front of me, let me blow my didge on them. I'm looking very deeply into all the other aspects of their life, so I get the whole picture, so that I can, give the best guidance.
So I find it fascinating that you're using a didgeridoo for some of your sound healing. That's amazing, because I'm from Australia, and that's probably the home of the didgeridoo.
Yes, it is.
And I want you to tell me a little bit more about that, because I find it fascinating that you'd use a didgeridoo to bring healing to people's bodies. What did the Aboriginals know that we're missing out on?
Well, this is what I know so far, right? There's always more. What I know so far is that the didgeridoo helps to break up stagnant energy within the body, within the meridians, within the cells. So if you bring that vibration right up to a person's heart or solar plexus or their knee, if they're having pain in their knee, that vibration goes in and breaks up the energy that's stagnant there. And it's always, for me, it's always whatever the person is ready for. So it's not like blasting someone with a blast of energy. It's providing that vibration for them, and they can use that energy how their soul sees fit. Right? So it's always that collaborative effort with me and my clients. The didgeridoo also brings in the element of the earth. My modality is called didgeridoo deep sound healing, and I use my voice as well. So the tones that come through my voice are like angelic, they're heavenly tones, and in combination with the didgeridoo, the person gets that balance of the heaven and the earth. You know, when you feel the didge and the vibrations, it's like this earthy, this primitive, primordial grounding. It does all those things. And for me, it brings me back to my soul. Before I started playing, I just had this deep soul desire just to be with this instrument. I can't explain it other than, you know, when I picked it up, I knew I'd played it in other lifetimes. It was just so, it called to me so deeply.
How old were you when you first heard the didgeridoo being played?
Oh, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea.
So when did you start playing the didgeridoo?
It was a year ago.
Okay, so fairly recently.
Yeah, time warp is so weird. I think it was a year ago. Not that long.
So what have you experienced, or what have you seen your clients experience when you use the didgeridoo as a means of healing?
Yeah. Less pain, the ability to breathe more deeply through their diaphragm, better circulation. Clients come out of sessions with more clarity. Let's see if there are any other big ones. Those are the big things that people tell me. People feel all different kinds of.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I'm just going to say people feel different things when they experience the didge right up next to them. One woman described like popping in her body, which was her sign that things were being released from her body. Other people see colors. Some people feel tingles. But the overall result is their clarity. They feel more peaceful. They're able to take deeper breaths. A couple people have had improved circulation from experiencing it. So it's pretty wild.
Do you use it like on a one-to-one basis when you have a client, or because I know you use it publicly because I've seen you play it in a public arena?
Yeah, both. I do groups and I do one-on-one as well.
So it's got me thinking what the Aboriginals were tapping into, because I think it's a crying shame to watch what Western society has done to a people who are so connected as they are. And really, in a way, you're going back to use that connection, aren't you? That they have probably had all the time, that we've been missing out on, maybe.
When I play my didge, it's never for entertainment. It's always for healing. And that's the intention that I bring to it, just because I facilitate healing. That's who I am. But I had a really cool experience with my own didge. Before I started using it for healing, I cleansed it. I had an initiation ceremony. Like, I did this whole thing. And I don't let anyone else play it. So when I play, all of my guides, all of my light beings, all of the angels, whatever you want to call them, they're all working through me, and that energy is coming through that tube. So the other day I was hanging out with my friend, and he also plays didge, and he was didging me. We call it didging somebody. He was blowing his didge on me, and I was like, you know what? Would you mind using my didge to do this? And he did, and I immediately started to cry, because I felt all the intention that I used to put through came in for me. And I was just overcome. It was so beautiful.
It's wonderful.
That was self-love.
Yeah, that's receiving, isn't it? And acceptance. Yeah, it's good. So Susie, you do something you call the raindrop technique. What's that, and how does that help your clients?
Yeah, that's a special technique using essential oils, and that was developed by Dr. Gary Young. And I use Young Living oils on the feet and along the spine. You use them on the feet because that's the area where the pores are largest, and it's also a big reflexology area, so you can, get every organ by working on the feet. And then using the oils along the spine, all the nerves coalesce along the spine, the circulatory system, so the oils within a couple of seconds are in every part of your body because they're absorbed through the feet and along the spine. And of course, because I like to sing, I'll add some toning in there as I'm working with people. So it's just, for me, it's fun. I get to have my hands on somebody and touch them in a profound way with these high vibrational substances, the essential oils, and I get to add more high vibration with the toning that comes through me. And it's just, I love it. It's just so much fun. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. So really, you've taken what you learnt from OT that you trained in years ago, and you're applying it using natural oils to bring healing to the body. Yeah.
Yeah, because of my medical background, I have some recollection of muscles and where their insertions are, and how they're arranged in the body. So I get to bring in that medical piece as well while I'm helping someone heal themselves.
So how do you connect nutrition?
You got frozen a little bit. Could you repeat that question for me?
Yeah, good. How do you integrate nutrition to all of this?
Yeah. Well, for me, it all comes down to vibration and frequency. So if we're hydrated, our body systems can flow more easily. It can communicate internally with, organs can communicate with each other, cells can communicate with each other when we're hydrated. Our nervous system works better. It raises our vibration because it cleans out lower vibrating stuff that gets lodged within us when we're dehydrated. So hydration is my first thing. And then nutrition, it's like, okay, what works best for your body? And that takes you knowing your body and going on a journey with your own physicality. And there are, of course, some obvious things like pure foods, foods that are organic, foods that aren't genetically modified, foods that are fresh. The foods that hold the highest frequency are foods that are in their whole food form. They're organic, they're fresh, local whenever possible. All those foods have a higher frequency. So they're going to lift your body up so that your body can heal itself.
Mm. So, Susie, say, for instance, I came to you as a client and I sat in the chair in front of you and I said, Susie, I've got a pain just in my chest. How would you go about handling that? I mean, you're using different modalities. How would you choose what is the best modality to use in that particular situation? And where would you lead somebody who came to you with a question like that?
Okay, so the answer to the first question is intuition. I would kind of assess where that person's at and what they're ready for. So then that helps me answer the second question. Depending on what they're ready for is dependent on what I give them. So if they're ready, like, to go all the way, then we'll go into the emotionality of that pain, the spiritual associations with that pain. We'll deal with the physicality. You know, we'll get all of those layers. The mental ideas about that pain, you know, looking at all 4 of those layers. If they're not ready to go all the way, but they are willing to try a change in diet, or maybe they, you know, just want some sound healing, then I'll, you know, again, I'll assess and see what they're ready for, and that determines what I'll give them. So it'll be different, you know. You could come to me with that, and someone else could come to me with that very same thing, and you could get 2 very different sessions.
Cool. I like that. So you're really meeting the need of that individual in the moment, in the present moment, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, my job as the facilitator is to wipe out any notion that I know what they need and allow spirit to come through, allow intuition to come through, you know, allow their own wisdom to speak to me, because that really is my job, to draw out their own wisdom. It's not for me to be the healer and say, okay, this is what you need. It's to pull out their own self-healing capabilities.
Well, you know what I'm thinking, Susie? I think I'd like to live in Sedona and receive one of those raindrop therapy.
Yeah, a lot of my work can be done via Skype or Google Hangout, but that's one that's got to be in person.
Yeah. So, Susie, I often say one of the ways of true empowerment is to be yourself and do what you love. And I think that you're doing that.
Finally. Yeah. Yeah, I would love, if we have time, to share with your audience about my journey to Sedona, how I got here.
Sure.
Yeah, because it really is, I really did empower myself with this. December 2013, Spirit said, okay, time to move. And I'm thinking, like maybe down the street or something, you know. Well, I went through this whole process of resistance and fear and all of these things until I finally came into acceptance that what I was really being asked to do was to let go of my stuff, let go of the house I was living in, pack my car, and get on the road. And there's something you have to understand about me. I don't like to be in a car. I don't like driving. I don't like being the passenger. I don't enjoy road trips. So for me, this is like way outside my comfort zone, way outside of anything I ever thought I'd do. And I know that Spirit didn't work me up to this. They laid it on me all of a sudden, because if they had worked me up to this, I would have just been like, no way, I don't want to do that. The truth is, they were working me up. The journey I had been on, of letting go, allowed me to let go in this big way. So, got in my car, went to see my parents, went to see my siblings in Utah, and then I came to visit a friend in Sedona. And I was going to stay for 3 weeks, and I didn't know what my next destination would be. I was just trusting that I'd be guided. Very scary, but I was just trusting. Well, I got to Sedona, and I just fell in love, and I was like, wow, this just really feels like home. And I was just welcomed with open arms by the people, by the land. It just really felt good. And so a couple days after I arrived, I sat down with my friend and I said, it feels like I'm supposed to be here a little bit longer than 3 weeks. And she said, yeah, I've been feeling that too. And then she said, "You're going to stay with me until your next step." Didn't put a time limit on it. Didn't say, you need to be an equal member of the household and do this and do that. Just offered me a place to stay, and that was it. And so then what happened was she actually had breast cancer. And she progressively got worse, and I became her caretaker. And in doing that, she had this whole community behind her. In doing that, I put my business on the side for a little bit. I wasn't as focused on it because a lot of my attention was going to her. And it just, I wasn't doing it out of obligation. I wasn't doing it because she put a roof over my head. I was doing it because I was listening to my heart, and that's what my heart wanted to do. And because I did it in that way, her community saw what I had done, and they set up this fund for me where they put money in and said, "Here, because you stopped doing your business, we want to take care of you." So, receiving. So I had to learn to receive. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever you guys want to give me, I'll receive it. But it really showed me that when we follow our hearts, we are taken care of. Because, Graham, I had doubted this. I had had doubts that I would really be taken care of. I left the house and the stuff and, what I thought was like my security, but it was really all an illusion. My security is really what's in here.
It's an amazing story. Amazing.
Yeah.
So how long have you been in Sedona now?
Since January, so 6 months. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So,
well, Susie, can you just wrap it up by telling people where they can contact you?
sure. They can go to my website. It's susiebeiler.com, SUSIEBEILER, susiebeiler.com, and you can contact me that way.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in today. My name's Graham Hopkins. I'm your host of the Be Empowered Show. I'm just going to ask the audience or the viewers to do me a big favour. If this has resonated with you in any way, could I ask you to go to iTunes and leave a review? And in that way, it'll increase the ratings, and this message will get received by a wider audience. So if you'd like to hear more of the concepts that Susie and I have talked about, and we've talked about a lot of things today, Susie, the one I really want to highlight maybe is quality of life, because I think Susie would agree that she's now reaching a quality of life that is just amazing. Would you agree with that, Susie?
Off the charts.
Off the charts. So if people would like to read more about this type of energy message, then you can always go to Amazon and download my book there called The Manifesto of Your Inspirational Mind, or go to my website www.beempoweredgroup.com and download a free ebook there called Know Your True Value and Worth. So on behalf of Susie and myself, we'd both like to wish you a wonderful future of freedom, quality of life, and abundance. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Susie.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Be Empowered podcast. For more on regaining your power by bridging that gap between who you think you are right now and who you really are, go to www.beempoweredgroup.com and enter your name and email address to receive a free ebook and get notified of any upcoming podcasts. Remember, when you know and feel connected to your spiritual mind, you master your world. Changing your energy transforms your life.